Well, back for another week. We're going to continue this conversation around wide receivers. My name's Nate Tapales, jumping into the Live Good Dynasty Podcast here with my buddy here, Arlen Love. What's up, man?
What's up, man? I'm excited to get through this one and start off on a note of agreement with our top five. I just want to pause and just say, make sure y'all comment in, let us know what you guys are thinking throughout the episode. We'd love the dialogue when we have that conversation in the chat, but also really appreciate everyone who has subscribed. It gives us a lot of motivation to come back another week and do another show. But we'd probably be talking, just not recording it without it, having the same conversations.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of what we get to do here, right? Like, we love inviting everyone in to participate with us. These are the conversations me and Arlen would be having anyway, and we've been having the last 5 or 6 years. Along the way, we're just stoked to be able to have it with all of you as well. So please jump in there. Check out our 6 to 10 episode. We called it out last time. We've already done our running back rankings. We've done our quarterback rankings, and reluctantly have jumped into our wide receiver rankings, where we have been on the struggle bus for sure. So we would love to hear your feedback and what you all think about where we're stacking folks. And are we just stacking them just to stack them? Because we need to figure out what the heck we're doing with 1 through 5. I think we pretty universally agree with who these top 5 should be, but it's the order that we're dealing with now. So I don't know. We want to jump right into this, Arlen?
Yeah, let's do it. I think the first one we got here in total agreement, and I didn't see it coming. In actuality, Marvin Harrison Jr. He's ranked higher for you and for myself than I really thought. But when you come down to it, it's something we rarely see, somebody who is built as a perfect prospect with the heritage in the family, as well as backing it up with the play, being double covered more than any other wide receiver in college football, yet a higher success rate versus those double covers than any wide receiver. It's impressive. Neighbors came close, and a lot of stats surpassed him in some, but he didn't see nearly the same attention that than Marvin Harrison Jr. did. Even though he did have a lot of attention, Captain Marvel, as I like to call him, everyone knew who he was from the start and wanted to shut him down, and they just couldn't. He's built perfect.
Yeah, and on top of that, beyond just his the way he's structured, I think his football IQ comes into play as well. His just clear understanding of the game, and of course I think that comes just with the DNA and some of the obvious knowledge that got poured into him growing up around the game. For sure. And we know what he's walking into, right? He's walking into a situation where we know that we have a quarterback that loves keying in on one wide receiver. I mean, there's some whispers that Michael Wilson will have a good year too, but I think Marvin Harrison is the guy, and Kyler is just going to be gunning for him. He did it with Hopkins. He's done it with Hollywood when he was out there. I think it's going to be a phenomenal year for him. And
all the reports out of camp aren't just that he's the guy, he's him, but it's also that he's the veteran. He's the one that is teaching the other wide receivers stuff already, where those wide receivers like Michael Wilson and Dortch and all of them are speaking as if I'm so glad he's here. I'm learning so much from him.
Right.
And that's as the rookie. And I don't think I've ever heard that approach. I've heard, wow, this guy Chase was an obvious stud. You've heard this from players like that, but then to hear the teammates talk about him like he's a veteran gives me goosebumps.
Doesn't make you cry though.
It's a little emotional.
It's an emotional show that we do here. And happy to see that we are in agreement there. But you've got an interesting pick for number 4, where you go next, and I think I kind of understand why. And I'll talk about him too here in a bit. But why you got this guy at number 4? What's going on in your head?
And so this is the one that, if you do comment, this is probably the one that you're going to want to, because I think it is pretty low. 4 is still tons of respect on the name, but CD Lamb, I think it's because we could point to the area of the schedule last year that we're this is where they're going to probably take off. and then they did what they were supposed to do. So it doesn't take away from that, but it also was expected uh,
Mm-hmm.
at that point in the season that they would do great. Probably not to that level, but that we did expect like a pretty big jump, and then they dominated. But then there's the question mark of long term. With I'm not really trusting the Cowboys back office right now. They need to pay CD. They need to pay like Prescott. They keep waiting and pretending like it's a smart thing. And I think Jerry Jones even said like, what you got to do is wait a little more, and then right when the timing's perfect. Well, the timing isn't perfect when you've got wide receiver after wide receiver getting paid. Some of which, like Hill and Cooper, not even getting extensions, just adding more money to their contracts
Right.
this year, and then you've got CD just waiting to get paid. So I think some of that is it for me, that he's still elite. He could finish again as the wide receiver one. I personally don't see it next to some of the other names, but it's definitely like within the realm. But everybody from here on out is a possible number one overall wide receiver this year. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my ways. 1,700 yards, 12 touchdowns. It does seem silly to put him at number 4.
Yeah, like I think the contract thing is what plays the biggest part. We don't know what holdout situations might be there. We don't know what's going to go on just with, general job satisfaction this year. And
Yeah.
if he's not happy and his leg cramps the wrong way, and we see him out for multiple games or something, that you never know what's going to happen. So there's some definitely a precedence for uncertainty there. So I understand having him at 4. But I chose the glass half full method with him.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that a little bit. Actually, let's just talk about these guys at the player level, I guess. So like, since we have all of the same guys on our top 4.
You're going to reveal your...
All right, fine. We'll talk about it down the line.
No, I think that's fine because I think we just did. CD, where do you have CD Lamb at?
So I have him at my number 1 spot just because for me, he is the guy. Because to your point, as little as Jones and those guys are doing for CD and Prescott, they're doing the same thing for the rest of the team. They didn't load up at receiver. There's not a ton of, like, you got Jalen back there behind him. You got a couple of other options, but there's no one waiting at the number 1 wing to take over CD here. So I just think he's got some time. He's obviously at 25, he's still got plenty of years left in his prime. I would be utterly surprised and blown away, and I might actually physically cry if he does not get paid before the season starts. But we'll see what happens with that for sure. But I think he's going to earn the respect of number 1, and just with the uncertainty of what's going on with some of the other guys up here that we're going to talk about, I like him at number 1.
Yeah, I think that I could move him up. I think just one more spot, and that's about it. So my number 3 is your number 4, and I could see swapping those for me. Amon-Ra St. Brown is your number 4. Tell me about why.
Yeah, the sun god, man. Amon-Ra St. Brown coming through, and he's my number 1 wide receiver on my dynasty team. Someone that I love to watch, and him coming back this year had over 1,500 yards. He had 10 receiving touchdowns last year. I don't see that slowing down too much, if at all, outside of what we've all been waiting for in the final arrival of Jameson Williams, right? Like, and then the continued growth of Sam Laporta, maybe eating up into a little bit of those targets, but I think Amon-Ra's there, and he's there to stay. I think he's right where I would have him. I can't put him above these other 2 guys or these other 3 guys that are there, but I believe in what he's been able to accomplish. He's been the consistent workhorse out there, and the things that he can do on the football field are amazing. So I'm keeping him there. But why do you have him above CD Lamb?
I went back and forth a couple times with it. I think the talent for me was similar enough. I could argue that CD Lamb is better, maybe just sexier than Amon-Ra's style of play. So because he's got almost like a Puka feel. where it it's better than it feels. And I think that the organization is the tiebreaker, where I trust the longevity of an upper echelon offense of the Lions over the longevity of an upper echelon offense of the Cowboys. And I think that's what it comes down to. I think that the Cowboys are putting themselves in a pretty tough position right now, where I think that, Detroit is just in a better situation to go on a longer run. And that's purely, like, really the only reason. The age is similar. They're only a year apart, so they might get an extra year. But I think in general, just the organization is what I trust more. So that was the tiebreaker for me in the end. They had similar stats last year. I mean, he finished Amon-Ra Brown finished 3-7 the year before, and I think CeeDee Lamb was like 1-5 the year before. But the yardage was similar last year, even though we said like he got over 1,700 yards. 1,500 yards is pretty insane too. 10 touchdowns to 12 with CeeDee Lambs. So you could see it. You could see it going either way between those two this year and in 5 years from now.
Yeah, for sure. They both averaged over 20 points a game, so it makes sense. I'm not saying they're completely interchangeable, other than how I'm saying most of the top 5 is pretty interchangeable. Like they're not, like we talked about this in the last episode, but just with how deep the wide receiver position is, you can make an argument for anyone that we're putting in this top 4 as the number 1 guy. And so, fight with us in the chat. Let us know in the thread how we're doing here so far. But as we jump into our number 3 and number 2 guy respectively, why is this guy fallen? Wasn't this guy the guy of guys for like the last 3 or 4 years?
Jefferson. Yeah. So for Justin Jefferson, I have him at 2 and you have him at 3 because you don't like him. He is the I think he's the best wide receiver in football.
Sure.
He's not in the best situation, and there are similar skill levels to Justin Jefferson. So I understand why you have him at 3, because you already spoke to your number 1 being CeeDee Lamb, and everyone knows what the other one's going to be in Jamar Chase. But Justin Jefferson here, he's the most talented, can produce with any quarterback. But Sam Darnold is that any quarterback. And then we don't know what is McCarthy, right? I'm not remembering wrong. We don't know what JJ McCarthy's like, what he's going to do, how he's going to be. You could get a couple off years where an off year for Justin Jefferson would be top 5 versus number 1 overall. And if that happens too many years in a row, then it's in a tougher position to kind of like, how fast do they figure it out? So the other guys just have a safer, like Jamar Chase, I feel like has a safer situation at quarterback than Justin Jefferson does. If you're saying they're going to figure it out and he's going to be top 5 for 2 years, and then climb back up, then we're looking at 27 years old, where he can get back to number 1, 2, 3, but can he consistently hit that? So I believe in the guy. I'm saying he's number 2, but why do you have him at 3 over the other, or under the other 2 guys over him?
Yeah, and maybe I'm a little higher on CeeDee Lamb than I should be theoretically, but because of these uncertainty pieces that are there, and as I'm standing here, I'm talking myself out of it. But I'm gonna stand by it, right?
Okay.
I do think he's the number 1 guy that I would want on my team and build my dynasty team around from the wide receiver position still today. But as far as compared to Jamar Chase, like I'm in the same wavelength as you are, man. Like we've got Justin Jefferson. He's clearly the number 1 talent that's out there. He's been doing it year after year after year. He's one of 4 receivers last year that averaged over 20 points per game, right? And he's in the games that he played, so he was at 20.2 points per game last year. So he's still doing it. And Sam Darnold, hopefully, like We haven't seen Sam Darnold be the guy yet anywhere that he's landed, right? But he's had moments of brilliance, and if he's got moments in the first 2 games to carry him, and brilliance is loosely used there for sure.
Yeah, that was generous.
Yeah, that was real generous. But he's had moments of letting wide receivers eat. I guess is where I'll put that.
Okay.
Here a little bit, right? And so when we think about it that way, Justin Jefferson will still get his. He's not got a ton of competition. We don't know what's going to happen with Addison this year with his constant legal battles. And then Hawkinson's still going to miss potentially half the season. So Jefferson's the guy.
N'Keal Harry season.
What's that? Stop trying.
Anyone want to trade?
No. All right. Anyway, N'Keal Harry season. Anyway, that interesting move that he's making for sure. But yeah, so Justin Jefferson's the guy still. And as we get into Jamar Chase, I think we both have him one step higher than Justin Jefferson, just because he's got Joe Burrow throwing to him. And we know what he is. We know the opportunity that is there. We've seen it through their college years and how they can win together. And right. So I think with all of that in place, you can't question it. He's going to be just locked in a little bit more than Jefferson is with JJ McCarthy, who didn't even have to throw in college, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm interested in Jamar Chase this season because, his year 1 was similar to Puka, where everything was very similar to Puka's stats. He even finished 5 versus Puka's 4, but similar yardage and touchdowns. Then he had 12, and then he finished 11. And we know that there's some problems with injuries, both of himself and Joe Burrow. But that is starting to be a question of what percentage chance they are both healthy for the whole year. And usually this is last year and this year. So the third, 4th year is the traditional full breakout of a wide receiver. So given he broke out in year 1, I'm wondering if is there more coming this year? Is there another level of step up? And I think there is. I think there's no question that he's number 1 or number one of the top ones, the top tier of wide receiver. But I guess I'm saying there is a little question. I guess that's what I'm saying. You had games where he hit 50 points in PPR last year in one of the weeks. He hit 30 in another. It's obviously there, but how many times can he string that together? And then how many times can those bad off weeks? There were a few there were many games last year that were under 10 points in PPR. Yeah. So where does that, how is that going to continue? Is that going to be part of his script, or is it going to be, are they going to change? Is he going to be an alpha consistent wide receiver?
I think the glass half full situation is real here for both of us having him as high as we do, that both he and Joe Burrow stay healthy. They were on and off with leg issues, I think, last year. And to your point, he did have those crazy games, but his points per game average last year was just 16 points per game, which is lower than most of the guys we're considering here in the top 5. So with that in mind, we are definitely leaning on something that hasn't happened yet, which is both of them being healthy. And so looking forward to that. A little less competition out there as well. And we don't know how T. Higgins is feeling about life. He's another guy that might be a leg cramp away from disappearing for a few games. So we'll see what happens.
I feel like this is next year. He's not going to be. I think that's at this point, pretty obvious. So it goes what Burton and Yoshi are the others that will be there, barring them bringing somebody else on. But he's also in contract. I feel less worried about his contract situation because he does have a little bit more time on his contract. It's actually a little surprising that he's already negotiating when he has this year and then a team 5th year option. So he's got a couple of years. But I'm on the side of get your money. The teams are making enough money. Get your money. I get it. It's a business and you only have a certain amount of years to play. So I tend to side on the players a little bit more. But he's doing a sit in or hold in right now, or he's not
Right.
practicing, but he's showing up and he's waiting for that new contract. So there is that too. I'm talking myself out of having him number one, but I'm gonna keep it in for now because I do have a lot of hope that I want another top tier guy out there, and Chase is one of those ones that can just be a figure for a long time. I'm hoping that he, separate from him being on my dynasty team, fully separate from that, honestly, just like for the player, I want to see that, and that's saying a lot as a Browns fan.
For sure, man, for sure. And I think what we would have to say is like hold on to the fact that we are in week 1 of preseason. Like the full slate of preseason games are happening this weekend, which I'm like so unbelievably excited for. So of course, like maybe we do more rankings episodes, at least from a redraft perspective, as preseason shakes out, or at least update these rankings as we go, and see how much things have changed. But yeah, because I'm definitely holding on to that right to adjust my rankings accordingly.
I think it's stay water. I think it's silly not to adjust. But as a recap, we had we'll start at number 10 and just give a little bit longer of a recap here. But at number 10, we had no idea what to do. I put Ayuk there. If he's been traded to the Steelers, I reserve the right to change it to Neighbors. You had Tyreek Hill at 10. 9 for Neighbors. At 9, I had Garrett Wilson. Chris Olave for myself at 8. I'll just continue with me and then do you. That makes more sense. 7, Puka Nacua. 6, AJ Brown. And then for my top 5, I had Captain Marvel, CD Lamb, Amon-Ra and St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, and my number 1 as Jamar Chase. You had...
All right. I'll start from the top just to clean it up here. Yeah. From wide receiver 10, I have Tyreek Hill, oldie but goodie, that 30-year-old still pumping away till he proves us otherwise. Number 9, we've got Malik Neighbors. Went down to number 8, where I have AJ Brown, questionably lower than maybe where you have him. Number 7, we agreed on Puka Nacua. Number 6, I have Garrett Wilson. We agreed again on number 5 with Marvin Harrison. And then I went to Amon-Ra St. Brown at my 4, Justin Jefferson at 3, Jamar Chase at 2, and with a huge question mark and a lot of uncertainty, my number 1, Mr. CD Lamb.
Now I'm going to ask one question on the spot here, and I can go first if you want a moment to think about it. But who is one wide receiver that you did not include in your top 10? We have spoke to the fact that our 7 through 15 essentially are interchangeable almost. It's tough at that level. But who there would you like to just highlight and speak to your belief in and knowing that they very well could be top 10 the next time we do this?
Yeah. Did you want to go first? Sorry, I know you talked about that first.
It's up to you. If you want me to go first and give it a second to think about it, because I did spring it up on you, but otherwise, yeah, you can go for it.
All right. So for me, I'm going to do 2 notable mentions here. One, I had a really hard time keeping this guy out, but because I included Tyreek, I felt silly including Jalen Waddle. Just putting both of them in there. But I think he's primed for that breakout year. A lot of the ways that you talked about Chris Olave in our last episode, I think Waddle can pop right into our top 10. He's got the talent. He's got the chemistry with Tua. Tua's locked in there. And maybe a little bit of personal bias is there because I traded him away this offseason. I made some decisions that are questionable. I don't know what I was doing this summer. And they're all going to come back to bite me this year. I've got to clean. I wanted to challenge myself going into year 3 of our Dynasty League, and I overdid it and overswung. But that's okay. I can still win this year. It's fine. But the guy that I would be remiss to talk about, and there would have to be an injury or something happening ahead of him to pop into the top 10. But one of the guys that is ahead of him is primed for injuries at all times, and not that I wish that upon people at all, but Rome Odunze, who I used my number 2 pick on. Right, I would not be surprised if something happened to say Keenan Allen, right? Up ahead of him, if I started to include him up in my top 10 of wide receivers. He's got the skill set. He's got the route tree. It's insane what he can do as well. And some pretty passes and things happening in the little short highlights you get of training camps that you're paying attention to. and we're going to talk about this a little bit more on our next episode, so I'll leave it alone. But just the things that we are expecting out of Caleb Williams and what he can do as well are really going to help him out. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's in my top 10 as well. But what do you got? Who's in yours?
I'll break the rules as well and say two players since you did. So one of them I'll just mention real quick, and I think everyone knows why. Drake London is definitely one that I had a hard time keeping out of my top 10, but I felt there's similar question marks and upside as Garrett Wilson and Olave, and it was really just numbers. But I'm going to put 66% of those players in the top 10. Drake London being the odd one out. The big one here that I really am just giving a sneak peek. Maybe I just won't do it next episode of who I really want on my team. I've been trying for two players. Ayuk was one of them all off season, but for about 9 months now, I've been trading almost every day for Nico Collins. I've been nonstop trading for Nico Collins and offering some pretty large trades, and it just won't happen. And the same person has both of them in our Dynasty League. I just can't. Yesterday I sent one. I was like, take either one of those two, same offer, just take it. But yeah, Nico Collins, I think, he's the number one. You have Tank there. You have Diggs there. I don't see it happening past this year. I think
Right.
Diggs is past the prime. But if not, and it's not a top 10 or top 5 from him in redraft this year, in general, I feel like he's such an elite talent that it's hard for me to imagine a world where he's not successful, even with a strong Tank Dell. You've got Stroud there, that if Stroud is who he shows that he might be, which I don't like as much in as a quarterback in fantasy because of the lack of rushing, but as a supporter of wide receivers, it's exactly who you want. So I think that he can jump quite easily into my top 10, and really what person I was bummed that I didn't have in there.
Yeah. It's a conversation we're not having today, but you can go back to our quarterback rankings and know that I fully believe in Stroud and have him up pretty high in my rankings because of how much he makes all these guys better. So I think he, as a quarterback on the Texans, for me, ranks higher than any of the wide receivers because I think you can take your pick. I think I like Tank Dell at his ADP more than Nico, but I totally see Nico jumping into the top 10 for sure. So yeah, I think the talent's there, and your boy can sling it. So I totally buy that for sure.
Yeah.
Well, folks, that's our 5 through 1. Make sure that you get in there and argue with us because we are even unsure of how we feel about our top 10. So let us know what you think about what we came up with here. Next episode, we're going to get into some great conversation outside of the rankings game. So we're looking forward to just thinking through how we're feeling about the upcoming NFL season. So we're excited to chat through
so many things I want to know.
So many curiosities and wonderments that are going to happen and things that are out there in the world. And so we want to talk about just things that we're excited, that we're wondering about, and things that we're scared of because there's some stuff coming. So tune back in for when we get there next week as well. Like, subscribe, love it, and feel good about life, y'all. Football is practically here.
All right, y'all. We'll see you.
See ya.
Cheers.